Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs. I am Zach, and I am back for another episode of Real Topics. This is episode 8, and while there aren't a lot of topics this week, there are 3 pretty big ones that we have to go over, so without further ado, let's dive on in. So the first topic this week, as I'm sure you've heard, the news broke on August 20th, 2019. Sony and Marvel could not reach a new deal in terms regarding the Spider-Man property, so Spider-Man can no longer be a part of the MCU. Now, this is really a terrible thing for everybody, for the fans, for Sony, and for Marvel. It's not good for any of them because now Sony, in the Spider-Man movies that they make, because they do have Tom Holland under contract, they can no longer reference anything that has anything to do with the MCU. So they're going to have to create new plots and new different reasons for Spider-Man to be doing these things that he's going to do, as well as they're gonna have to pretend that nothing in the MCU ever happened. They can't mention it. And then if you flip it the other side with the MCU, they have to pretend like Peter Parker never existed. They can't mention him. Same deal as with Sony. So this sucks for both of them. It's gonna feel weird and awkward. I mean, for God's sake, the character of Peter Parker is so closely tied to Tony Stark and now Happy and now even Nick Fury, and he's just so mixed up in all this, and you're just gonna suddenly pretend like he's not? It's not gonna work. It's gonna feel superficial and forced, and it's gonna just kind of be world breaking. Like when you're watching the movie, you're gonna know full well that the only reason that Spider-Man's not in it, or the only reason that they're not mentioning MCU stuff, is because this deal fell through. So it's gonna hurt the movies, and it sucks for the fans, especially since Marvel was really propping Spider-Man up to kind of be the Iron Man-esque figure heading into Phase 4, and it's a real letdown that may not happen now. There's still potentially a shot that this deal gets done, especially if there's a ton of backlash from fans. Maybe this will kind of force Marvel or Sony's hand, and they'll come to terms. We will have to wait for that, though. As of right now, it doesn't look good, and it's just really unfortunate. And I can't believe this happened. I mean, you kind of have to put the blame on both of them. Marvel apparently wants more money, so there's that greed factor. And Sony seems to be forgetting that they drove the Spider-Man franchise into the ground just a few years ago until Marvel resurrected it. So I think they both need to just set aside their differences and work something out that's beneficial to the fans. But we all know that's not how things work. So whatever makes them the most money is what's going to happen. And ultimately, Sony thinks that going off on their own with Spider-Man is going to make the most money. So, like I said, hopefully this outrage and backlash will kind of have them circle back and make a deal. But there's nothing we can do but wait. As for the Spider-Man property going forward, I believe that Sony will try to combine Spider-Man and Venom into a movie and make a movie about that, which I'm skeptical about because I don't trust Sony, because Marvel has proven time and time again that they can make good films. Sony, in terms of Spider-Man, not so much. Does anybody remember The Amazing Spider-Man 2? Yeah. And on the MCU side of things, it is unclear how they're going to proceed. It was fairly evident that they were positioning Spider-Man to take a starring role in the future of the MCU. And now that that rug has been pulled off from underneath them, they're going to have to probably replace him with somebody else. I don't know who, though. I think the likely candidates could be Captain Marvel, maybe Thor, maybe Black Panther. I would go with Thor. I think if they could develop him into a strong leader, because he's kind of a goofball now. If they develop him into more of a strong leader, that would be interesting. I don't think that Captain Marvel is as likable as Thor or Black Panther. She's got work to do in terms of that. And Black Panther as a character isn't too exciting. Maybe they'll develop him some more in the sequels, but as of right now, it is all very unclear. I will say, though, I'm more confident in the MCU being able to weather this than Sony being able to weather this, because the MCU made Spider-Man, at least this version of him, not the other way around. The MCU was doing fine before Spider-Man, and the MCU will probably do fine after Spider-Man. I can't say the same for Sony and Spider-Man. And for our second topic of the day, The Matrix 4 is a go, with Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss starring and Lana Wachowski directing. This is very surprising. I mean, I was pretty sure that the Matrix would never, at least the original cast of the Matrix, would never get a continuation of their story, considering the third one kind of finalized it. I mean, didn't Trinity die and Neo? So it'll be interesting to see what they do. You know, the Wachowskis have been very hit or miss since those movies, hell, even since the third one. So I'm hopeful for this. I loved the first Matrix, and I like a lot about the second Matrix, and the third Matrix is kind of a mess. So I guess I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I'm not 100% certain that this story needs to be continued, but hell, if we're getting it, I'll watch it. It's The Matrix. It's one of the greatest action movies of all time. What it did for the genre was incredible. It was groundbreaking and definitely one of my favorite movies to watch when I was a kid. So I'll absolutely go see the next Matrix. I just hope that they actually have a good story to tell and they're not just doing this to make a cash grab. While Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss are returning, I looked into it and it doesn't seem like Lawrence Fishburne will be returning as Morpheus. I didn't hear anything about Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. I would love Hugo Weaving to come back, but those two guys they're getting older. They're late 50s, practically 60. But I would absolutely love to see them both come back. I just don't think it's happening with Lawrence Fishburne. We will have to wait and see for Hugo Weaving. But can you really imagine a Matrix movie without Hugo Weaving? Agent Smith is iconic, one of the best villains of all time. He's just awesome. So that would be on the top of my wish list for the Matrix 4 is to have Hugo Weaving back as Agent Smith. And to wrap it up, our last topic of the day, there have been some early screenings of It Chapter 2, and generally the consensus is that it's good, but it's not as good as the first one. And honestly, this is about what I expected. Horror movie sequels are typically tricky, and the nature of the It story, it does get kind of convoluted once they become adults. I mean, in the novel, it kind of jumps back and forth between them being kids and being adults. Obviously, they didn't do that in the first movie, so it'll do that in the second movie, and that's just kind of it doesn't flow smoothly. That's part of the reason why I couldn't get through the book. It's kind of once you get going with one narrative, it switches to the future or the past, and it's kind of irritating. So I could see that being somewhat of a problem in the movie. But the reviews did say it was scary and it had some great scares, and that Bill Hader was incredible, which we should expect because, I mean, if you haven't seen Barry, definitely go watch that. He's amazing in Barry. He's a very talented actor. He's not just a comedian. So it seems like we have a decently good movie to look forward to. Nothing groundbreaking, but it will probably make a lot of money. And we'll get that in a couple weeks. So that was this week's episode of Real Topics. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you back here next week for another one. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you want. It's totally up to you. And I will see you in the future. Bye!